Daniel Carter never thought his life would unravel so quickly. At 38, he had spent nearly half his life working for the same food manufacturing company. He wasn't the type of employee who chased attention or office politics. He simply showed up every day, worked hard, and did his job well. Over 15 years, he earned a reputation for being dependable. If there was a problem, Daniel stayed until it was solved. If a deadline seemed impossible, he found a way to meet it. His work mattered because of Lily, his 9-year-old daughter. 3 years earlier, Daniel had lost his wife Emma after a long illness. Since then, every decision he made revolved around giving Lily a stable life. Their mornings followed the same routine. Daniel would wake up early, make breakfast, pack her lunch, and walk her to the bus stop before heading to work. In the evenings, they shared dinner at their small kitchen table, talked about school, and watched old movies before bed. Life wasn't perfect, but it was steady. Then everything changed. One Monday morning, employees were called into an unexpected company meeting. The atmosphere felt uneasy. People whispered to one another as senior executives took their seats. At the front stood Victor Hayes, the company's recently appointed CEO. Without much introduction, he announced a major restructuring. Departments would be cut, positions would be eliminated, the company needed to reduce costs. Daniel listened quietly, confident that his years of service would count for something. Then he saw his name on the list. His stomach dropped. When the meeting ended, he tried to speak with management, hoping there had been a mistake. But the decision was final. 15 years of loyalty were reduced to a brief conversation and a severance packet. That evening, Daniel sat silently at home while Lily worked on her homework. "What's wrong, Dad?" she asked. He looked at her innocent face and forced a smile. "I lost my job today." Lily put down her pencil and hugged him tightly. In that moment, Daniel realized he had lost his career. But he still had the one thing that mattered most. And for her, he would find a way to start again. The weeks after losing his job were some of the hardest Daniel had ever faced. He applied for dozens of positions, updated his resume, and attended interviews whenever he could. Some employers never called back, while others politely told him they had chosen someone with more recent experience. Each rejection made the future feel a little more uncertain. Bills continued to arrive and his savings slowly disappeared. Daniel cut every unnecessary expense. He canceled subscriptions, sold a few pieces of furniture, and even gave up his old car to keep paying the rent. Through it all, he tried not to let Lily see how worried he was. One afternoon, while walking home from another unsuccessful interview, Daniel noticed an old bakery at the corner of a quiet street. The windows were dusty, the sign was faded, and a handwritten notice read, "For sale." Something about the place made him stop. As a teenager, Daniel had worked weekends in his grandfather's small bakery. He remembered the smell of fresh bread before sunrise, the sound of dough being kneaded, and the smiles on customers' faces as they carried warm loaves home. Those memories had never left him. The building wasn't impressive, but it felt familiar. After speaking with the owner, Daniel learned that the bakery had been closed for months. The price was low because no one believed it could succeed again. It was a risk, but it was the only opportunity he could afford. Using the last of his savings, Daniel bought the bakery. The first few weeks were exhausting. He scrubbed the floors, repaired broken shelves, painted the walls himself, and fixed old equipment whenever possible instead of buying new machines. Lily spent her weekends helping him clean tables, arrange display shelves, and write cheerful messages on a small chalkboard outside. When the bakery finally opened, only a handful of customers came in. Instead of feeling discouraged, Daniel greeted every person with genuine warmth and baked every loaf as though he were serving his own family. He believed that if the bread was made with care and people were treated with kindness, they would eventually return. It wasn't a quick success, but for the first time in months, Daniel felt hopeful again. Nearly a year passed, and the little bakery slowly became part of the neighborhood. It wasn't because Daniel offered the cheapest bread or the fanciest pastries. People came because they felt welcome. He remembered customers' names, asked about their families, and always greeted them with a warm smile. If an elderly customer struggled to carry groceries, Daniel helped them to their car. If a child didn't have enough money for a cookie, he quietly slipped one into the bag anyway. Business improved one customer at a time. One rainy afternoon, the bakery was unusually quiet. Lily sat at a corner table doing her homework, while Daniel removed a tray of fresh sourdough from the oven. The comforting smell of warm bread filled the room as the front door opened, and a man stepped inside, shaking rainwater from his coat. Daniel looked up and froze. It was Victor Hayes. The confident executive Daniel remembered looked different now. His expensive suits had been replaced by simple clothes, and the sharp expression that once intimidated employees had disappeared. He looked tired, older, and weighed down by something far heavier than the rain outside. Victor didn't recognize Daniel at first. He glanced at the display case and quietly asked, "Could I have a loaf of your fresh bread?" As Daniel placed the bread into a paper bag, Victor finally looked at the name stitched onto his apron. His eyes widened. "Daniel, I didn't expect to see you here." Daniel nodded politely. Life has a way of taking us to unexpected places. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Victor sighed. "My company is gone," he admitted. "Poor decisions, declining sales, and mistakes I refuse to acknowledge. I lost everything." Daniel listened without interrupting. He remembered the humiliation of losing his job, the sleepless nights, and the fear of not being able to provide for Lily. Part of him could have enjoyed seeing the man who had dismissed him now standing in need. Instead, he simply handed Victor the warm loaf. "It's on the house," Daniel said gently. Victor stared at him in disbelief. "After everything I did to you, why would you do that?" Daniel smiled softly. "Because holding on to bitterness would only keep me trapped in the past. I'd rather build a better future than relive old pain." Victor stood silently, holding the warm loaf of bread in his hands. For a long moment, he couldn't find the right words. He had expected anger, resentment, or even humiliation after the way he had dismissed Daniel from the company. Instead, he had been met with kindness. "I'm sorry," Victor finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I spent years believing profits mattered more than people. I forgot that every employee had a family depending on them." Daniel looked toward Lily, who was placing freshly baked rolls into a basket behind the counter. "I used to think losing my job was the worst thing that could happen to me," Daniel replied. "But if it hadn't happened, I would never have discovered what I was truly capable of. This bakery gave me more than an income. It gave me purpose." Victor nodded, ashamed of the choices that had brought him there. Before leaving, he reached for his wallet, but Daniel gently pushed his hand away. "Take the bread," he said. "Everyone deserves a fresh start." The following week, Victor returned, not as a customer, but as a volunteer. He offered to help repaint the bakery's storage room and repair a few broken shelves. Daniel accepted without hesitation. Day by day, they worked side by side. They didn't erase the past, but they chose not to let it define their future. Months later, the bakery expanded into the neighboring shop. Daniel hired several people who had been unemployed for a long time, giving them the same opportunity he had once needed. He believed everyone deserved someone who believed in them. One evening, as the bakery closed for the day, Lily smiled at her father. "Dad," she said, "remember when we thought we had lost everything?" Daniel looked around at the busy bakery, the loyal customers, and the people whose lives had been changed through simple acts of kindness. He smiled. "No," he said softly, "we didn't lose everything. We only lost the life that wasn't meant for us." Sometimes life's greatest setbacks become the beginning of its greatest blessings. Success built on compassion lasts far longer than success built on power, and forgiveness has the power to open doors that pride never can.